Sun dipped below the horizon, sky bled orange, then purple. A chill wind rustled through the trees, whispering secrets only they knew. Ahead, silhouetted against the dying light, stood Hollowbrook. Desolate, abandoned, forgotten by time but not by fear. The old dirt road, cracked and overgrown, was the only way in. It snaked through skeletal trees, their branches clawing at the twilight like gnarled fingers. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and decaying leaves. A sense of dread settled over the group of friends as they neared the village, their laughter fading into nervous silence.
Seriously, guys, ghosts, this is ridiculous.
You're letting Mike's overactive imagination get to you.
There were 4 of them. Mike, the self-proclaimed leader, fueled by bravado and a thirst for adventure. Emily, the voice of reason, her apprehension masked by a nervous curiosity. Ben, the quiet observer, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings, noticing every creak and groan. And then there was Chloe, the skeptic, armed with a backpack full of snacks and a dismissive smirk.
It's not my imagination. My grandpa used to tell me stories about this place. Said it was cursed. He lowered his voice, leaning in conspiratorially. People disappeared.
The sun had vanished completely now, leaving them shrouded in an eerie twilight. The shadows stretched long and distorted, playing tricks on their eyes. Every rustle of leaves, every creak of wood, sent shivers down their spines. They pressed on, deeper into the heart of the abandoned village. They reached the town square, a desolate expanse of cracked pavement and overgrown weeds. A crumbling fountain stood in the center, its once clear water now a stagnant pool of green slime. The buildings surrounding the square were in various states of decay, their empty windows like vacant sockets staring out at them. As they crossed the square, Emily noticed something strange.
This is creepy, she muttered, holding up a doll she found for the others to see.
It's just a doll, Em. Probably left here by some kids who snuck in before us.
But even she couldn't ignore the unsettling feeling that had settled over them. It was as if they were being watched, their every move observed by unseen eyes. The old mill loomed ahead, a skeletal silhouette against the darkening sky. It was the largest structure in Hollowbrook, and by far the most intimidating. Even in its ruined state, it was an imposing sight, its charred timbers reaching skyward like the arms of a fallen giant. This was the source of the stories, the epicenter of the legend of Malachi.
No way I'm going in there. That place is falling apart. We could get seriously hurt. No, I'm not scared. I'm sensible. S3. Scared, Chloe?
Ben, ever the pragmatist, spoke up. She's got a point, Mike. It's getting dark and we don't know what's inside.
He shone his flashlight towards the mill, its beam swallowed by the darkness within. Could be dangerous.
Mike hesitated, torn between his desire to explore and his better judgment. Before he could respond, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air. It came from inside the mill. A scream filled with terror, raw and primal. They froze, their blood turning to ice in their veins.
What was that? She whispered, her voice trembling.
Even Mike, for once, had no answer. The scream echoed through the ruins, bouncing off the empty buildings, amplifying the terror. It seemed to hang in the air, long after it had ended, leaving a ringing silence in its wake. They stood there, paralyzed by fear, unsure of what to do next. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the silence was broken by another sound. A faint humming, coming from inside the mill. It was a low, rhythmic sound, almost melodic, but with an underlying current of something sinister. It drew them in like moths to a flame.
We have to get out of here, Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Now!
Wait, what if someone's hurt, he said, his voice surprisingly steady. We can't just leave them.
Chloe, her skepticism momentarily forgotten, looked at him like he was crazy.
Are you nuts? That was probably just an animal. Or worse, we need to get out of here before whatever made that sound finds us. But Mike was already moving towards the mill, drawn by the strange humming and the faint glimmer of light emanating from within.
The humming grew louder as they approached the mill, vibrating through the air, through their bones. It seemed to emanate from the very heart of the building, beckoning them closer. The faint light, they now saw, was coming from a single window, high up on the second floor. Mike, emboldened by a strange sense of purpose, pushed open the creaking door. The interior was pitch black, the air thick with the smell of damp wood and decay. He shone his flashlight around, the beam cutting through the darkness, revealing glimpses of rusted machinery and cobwebs thick as curtains.
"Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing through the vast emptiness. "Is anyone there?" Only silence answered him.
He took a tentative step inside, followed hesitantly by Emily and Ben. Chloe, her face pale with fear, remained rooted to the spot.
"This is a bad idea, Mike," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the humming. "We need to get out of here." But Mike was no longer listening. He was drawn deeper into the mill, following the humming, the strange melody pulling him towards the source of the light.
The air grew colder as they ascended the creaking staircase, the humming intensifying with each step. The source of the light was closer now, emanating from a room at the end of a long, narrow hallway. The floorboards groaned under their weight, threatening to give way at any moment. They reached the room, the humming reaching a fever pitch. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap they could see flickering candlelight and the silhouettes of figures moving within. Mike, his heart pounding in his chest, slowly pushed the door open. The room was surprisingly intact, its walls lined with bookshelves and strange symbols drawn in chalk. In the center of the room, a fire burned brightly in a stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on the walls. And gathered around the fire, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames, were 4 figures. They were dressed in long dark robes, their hoods pulled low over their faces, obscuring their features. They were chanting in a low, guttural language, their voices rising and falling in unison with the humming. In the center of the circle lay a book, its pages open, revealing strange diagrams and symbols. The chanting stopped abruptly as the figures turned towards the doorway, their faces still hidden in the shadows of their hoods.
Mike, Emily and Ben froze, caught in the act of witnessing something ancient and forbidden.
Chloe, her fear finally overwhelming her, turned and ran, her scream echoing through the empty mill.
The figures moved with a speed that belied their age, their robes billowing around them like wings.
Mike, his mind reeling, grabbed Emily and Ben's hands and pulled them after him, fleeing back down the hallway, the sound of their pursuers close behind.
They stumbled out of the mill and into the night, the fog rolling in thick and fast as if summoned by the darkness itself.
They could hear the figures closing in, their footsteps heavy on the wooden planks of the bridge that spanned the river.
Mike, his heart pounding in his chest, led them through the fog, the darkness swallowing them whole.
They ran blindly, their lungs burning, their legs screaming for respite.
But the figures were relentless, their pursuit fueled by an ancient anger. They emerged from the fog, gasping for breath, their clothes torn and their faces streaked with dirt and sweat.
They had somehow made it back to the village square, the skeletal outline of the fountain a welcome sight in the darkness.
But the figures were gone.
They collapsed on the steps of the fountain, their bodies trembling with exhaustion and fear.
The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of their own ragged breathing.
What were they doing? Emily whispered, her voice shaking.
What did we stumble into? Mike, his mind still trying to process the events of the night, could only shake his head.
He didn't have an answer. He wasn't even sure he wanted to know.
I told you we should have left. I told you this place was cursed.
We need to get out of here, Ben said, his voice low and urgent. Now!
They didn't speak as they made their way back through the village, their earlier bravado replaced by a chilling fear.
The shadows seemed to press in on them, the silence filled with unseen menace.
Even Chloe, her usual skepticism silenced, seemed to sense the danger that lurked in the darkness.
As they reached the edge of the village, the first rays of dawn breaking through the trees, they came to an abrupt halt.
The old dirt road, their only way out, was gone. In its place, a wall of impenetrable fog swirling and shifting as if alive.
Panic surged through them, cold and sharp. They were trapped.
Mike, his confidence shaken, tried to rationalize their situation.
"It's just fog," he said, his voice lacking its usual conviction. "It'll burn off soon."
We're going to die here, she sobbed. We're all going to die.
We'll be okay, she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her heart. We just need to stay together.
Days turned into weeks. The fog never lifted. Hollowbrook had become their prison, a place of whispers and shadows. Every path led back to the village. They learned to survive, to scavenge, to avoid the darkest places. One day they found a message carved into an old oak tree. It was a warning, beware, a reminder they were not alone. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying echoes of the past. The legend of Malachi lived on, a chilling reminder of darkness.